of an individual. I had got to know Bob quite well in China, believe it or not. I was consulting in China, and Bob led various groups to China from time to time. And it so happened we were both in Chengdu at the same time. And one of the outstanding, he asked me to talk to the people in his group, maybe 40 people, mostly ladies, about what it was like to work in China. And I started my spiel, and at the same time, somebody started hammering away in the background, doing some work in the hotel. And Bob McClure immediately got up and he went and berated these people in Chinese and told them to shut up. That was the kind of character he was. And the particular event that Jack was talking about was a wonderful, wonderful celebration of his wife and of his life, and also recognition of the commitment of his wife, Amy, where she had supported him throughout his mission. Right. One can go on for a long time about the various things that this guy, as a surgeon, did. One outstanding example was that during the war, he was dropped in to northern part of Malaya, near the Burma Road. Some of you may recall. That was where the Allies funded support into the Chinese. And one of the trucks had broken down. Well, Bob McClure had been parachuted in to fix somebody's leg, somebody was badly injured. He did that. Then he turned around and fixed this dog's truck that needed fixing. That was the kind of basically a most wonderful individual, and the celebration of his life was an incredible experience for those who were there.
Thank you, Ron. And Sandy, you knew him too.
Yes, but I don't not as much detail as Ron.
Okay, well, you know, he was such a character because there's 2 books written on him. And here's one line. Can you imagine it? While McClure was following the dictates of his own conscience, the Chinese national soldiers attempted. The Japanese put a price on his head. Communists blacklisted him, and Canada's Prime Minister Mackenzie King, can you imagine, a member of our club? Anyway, so that's a little bit about the McClure Awards. Now, the Sage Awards. In 2020, the McClure Awards came to the attention of an anonymous retired academic. She retired, was retiring after 50 years at U of T. She contacted me, and she wanted to give back to Rotary. Why? Well, in 1968, as a student in Denmark, she was the recipient of a Rotary International Travel Scholarship, a life-changing experience that brought her to Canada and into a career as a professor in the Faculty of Medicine at UNC. So she contributed to give back. She contributed $75,000 to Ryerson in our name. She wanted, and at that time, Ryerson matched the donation. So we established an endowment of $150,000, which meant that $30,000 could be awarded over 5 years. You know, of all the awards we have, the Sage Award to us because it epitomizes the value of Rotary, giving service to the community, and exemplifying how life-changing Rotary can be. Think of that, Anna. Think of how we're going to change lives in the Ukraine with your project, and promoting international understanding, and giving quietly without any personal recognition. She chose to remain anonymous. First, I welcome Anthony to come and take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Bakurjian. As you already know, it's a pleasure to be here with you. As Jackie said, I'm with Toronto Metropolitan University. And first off, I just want to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the Toronto Rotary Club of Eglinton. It's been incredibly meaningful, your support over the past few years, and with the McClure Awards in Health Sciences and the SAGE Awards helps remove financial barriers for our students and helps encourage and support them as they pursue their goals and their dreams, and to equip them to do their work, to pursue excellence, and then to give back to their communities. So thank you. As Jackie has shared, your awards have supported many students, going back to, for the McClure Awards started in 2016, and over these past few years, you've supported 9 students within the School of our School of Nutrition, our School of Midwifery, and our School of Occupational and Public Health. So thank you. And also our the SAGE Awards have supported up to 9, they've supported 9 students. And I think we've just had the final year of the awards, and the McClure Awards are heading to their final year of the term. And so you've had a significant impact on the lives of students at Toronto Metropolitan University. I would like to introduce the names of this year's award recipients. Many of them couldn't be here, as many here, and they are still in they still have classes, and there's many of them are entering their final years of their degrees or starting new programs, and unfortunately they all have classes today. It's right after Labor Day, so they send their regrets, but I do have notes of appreciation that I would like to read to you today. The first recipient of this year's McClure Award in Health Sciences is Star Trudeau. And let me just share her picture here. And this is her note to you all. I would like to humbly express my appreciation and gratitude for selecting me as a candidate for this prestigious award. It provides a great opportunity within my academic journey and allows me to feel relieved of the financial stress I have. I will be a 4th-year nursing student here at Toronto Metropolitan University. I also come from a reservation called Sagamok Anishinaabeg, and coming from an Indigenous background, it brings me immense joy to attain education and skills that I may bring back to my community. Having a lack of access to healthcare resources, amongst many others, for far too long. If I could have some part in alleviating this barrier, I'd feel happy for making some difference. Receiving this award allows me to do so. With your generous donation to my education, it not only allows me to focus on my studies rather than working part-time, but it will allow me to assisting my people. I'd like to send a big thank you for your generosity and kindness in allowing me to assist my community, but also thank you for also indirectly assisting them too. Your donations will always be remembered and appreciated through my journey. Thank you to the Toronto Eglinton Rotary Club, Dr. McClure, and the many names that we see, that we may not see, but I do, for this award. So, Star, thank you. The second recipient is Victoria Ridinar. I'm writing to let you know how thankful I am to the Toronto Eglinton Rotary Club and Dr. Robert McClure Award in Health Sciences. This award represents not only recognition of my dedication to pursuing excellence in the health science field, but also a validation of the challenges I have faced and overcome on my journey. As a non-status Indigenous individual with roots in the Nipissing First Nation, encountered both personal and systemic obstacles that have shaped my path. My family's history is marked by resilience in the face of adversity, from generational poverty to the enduring impacts of social determinants of health. Despite these challenges, I have remained committed to pursuing my education and making a difference in my community. The financial support of this award that this award in helping me succeed in the next part of my academic career as I pursue a master's in health science and nutrition at Toronto Metropolitan University, which will begin in the fall of this year to become a registered dietitian. It alleviates the financial strain of education expenses, allowing me to focus wholeheartedly on my studies and professional development. Moreover, this award represents more than just financial assistance. Investment of the Toronto Eglinton Rotary Club and Dr. Robert McClure in my future success and contribution to the health science field. It motivates me to continue striving for excellence and to use my education and experience to make a positive impact, both within my community and beyond. I am deeply grateful for the generosity and support provided by the Toronto Eglinton Rotary Club and Dr. Robert McClure Award in Health Science. This investment in my education is not taken lightly, and I am committed to making the most of this opportunity. It strengthens my resolve to pursue my goals and aspirations, knowing that I have such support in an individual behind me. Thank you once again for this incredible honor. Sincerely, Victoria Rignar. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce now the recipients of the SAGE Awards, both whom will be giving a presentation. One will be on the screen and the other in person. But I'll just like to introduce them both to you before they speak. Jaden Herkimer. Jaden Herkimer is a PhD student in the psychological science program at Toronto Metropolitan University. She is a member of the Social and Political Psychology Lab. Jaden is Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and European Canadian, and a member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. She is also a member of the Decolonizing and Indigenizing Psychology, who are developing a new undergraduate university course at TMU on Indigenous psychology. Jessica DeBack, who's here with us, is a proud Anishinaabe and Hungarian woman from the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. Jessica works at the University of Toronto, Mississauga as a special projects officer within the Office of Indigenous Initiatives. Within this role, she leads projects that mobilize with an emphasis on Indigenous placemaking. She also provides Indigenous advisory to senior leadership, faculty, staff, librarians, and students. In 2023, Jessica received the Excellence Through Innovation Award for co-leading the University of Toronto Mississauga's first All Nations Powwow, which was a formal, informal partnership within the nation. Jessica has also volunteered in several capacities from 2017 to 2022. She sat on the Toronto Public Library's first ever Indigenous Advisory Council. She also sat on the board of directors as an executive board member at the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto in the Ontario HIV/AIDS strategy. She is passionate about mobilizing reconciliation and uplifting epistemologies and ontologies. And we'll first hear from Jane.
Here in person today, but I am happy to still have the opportunity to tell you about my work and how the SAGE Award has helped me in my academic journey. So I want to give a bit of an introduction. I'm entering my first year of my PhD at Toronto Metropolitan University in the psychological science program. I'm an Anishinaabe.
Start it again. Hello, everyone. My name is Jaden Kirkmer. I'm sorry I can't be there in person today, but I am happy to still have the opportunity to tell you what has helped me in my academic journey. So I wanted to give a bit of an introduction. I'm entering my first year of my PhD at Toronto.
Sorry. I apologize.
That's it, David. You got that.
You got it now?
Yep.
Metropolitan University in the psychological science program. I'm an and European and member I'm in the social and psychology, which include Indigenous settler relations, social identity, political ideologies, collective action, and also environmental psychology. Today, I'm going to present a bit about my master's thesis research titled Non-Indigenous Canadians, Post-Colonial Ideologies, Allyship and Collective Guilt, Support of Reconciliation. So implications. Some of points of the reconciliation. 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada released a report documenting the legacy of residential schools in Canada and made 94 calls to action to address the historical and present-day injustices that Indigenous peoples have experienced. But as of June of 2024, only 14 of the 94 calls have actually been completed. The report mostly calls upon non-Indigenous deregulation is not an Indigenous problem, it's a Canadian one. And psychology tells us that out-group support can help advance social change. So we really need more non-Indigenous people to be doing this work. So in addition to reconciliation, I was interested in potential measures of non-Indigenous support for Indigenous peoples and causes. So I also looked at support for Indigenous collective action. So collective action can be defined as any act that's undertaken by individuals on behalf of their group or on behalf of other groups because of shared beliefs. Some prominent Indigenous movements in Canada that use Every Tribe Matters and Land Back. And then one other measure of support I looked at. Extension of systems like others. So it's extensive beyond exclusions of groups from rights, which is deliberate exclusions of groups from rights that are extended to others. And so we conceptualize political tolerance as that bare minimum requirement of support. Maybe the allyship can and symbolic exclusion. So historical negation is the belief that the historical injustice and then symbolic exclusion is the belief that Indigenous cultures are not relevant to modern. Past research tells us that post-colonial ideologies are associated with many things, including less support for collective actions intended to address inequality, conflict,
collective guilt is often studied. So this is an emotion that's based on the wrongdoings that one's group has committed against another group. And the right amount of collective guilt has the potential to foster positive outcomes for harm groups. So with all that being said, this was my final model that I came up with, my mediation model, where historical negation and symbolic exclusion should result in less guilt and thus less support and tolerance. And then on the other hand, allyship should result in more guilt and more support and tolerance. However, there was a lack of research on this topic in campus relationships. So this is my moderation model. So this would mean that as levels of guilt get higher, the anticipated negative relationships between post-colonial ideologies and those three outcome variables will be weaker. And the anticipated positive relations between allyship and those three outcomes will be stronger. So I ended up conducting 2 studies, both sample students. And as expected, we found that people higher in those ideologies report less support for reconciliation and collective action and less political tolerance. We also found that people higher in allyship and collective guilt report more support and more tolerance as well. And then in the mediation analyses, we found that collective guilt mediated relationships between higher post-colonial ideologies, affiliation, and Indigenous collective action, but there was actually no mediation that was significant for political tolerance. So the findings show that more allyship is associated with more collective guilt, which then leads to these higher ideologies are associated with less guilt and then less support. And then finally, looking at the really moderated, not mediated by collective guilt. And so this difference that we see with political tolerance in comparison to Indigenous collective action and reconciliation might be because political tolerance is quality action, right? So political tolerance is really that bare minimum measure of support, whereas reconciliation and Indigenous collective action requires more effort and systemic changes, which is why you might see these differences in the results. And so, yeah, this research has really helped to demonstrate those different factors that can influence non-Indigenous Canadians' attitudes and behaviors regarding their support for Indigenous peoples and causes. And knowing these things is really important because it may tell us how we can get more people to participate in these efforts, such as interventions that might lower post-colonial ideologies, for example. But there's so much more that still needs to be about future directions. And that's why I really wanted to take the time to thank the Toronto Eglinton Rotary Club for this SAGE Award. So in 2023, during my second year of my master's, I actually had to move back home, just given the rising cost of living. And so my commute from home to TMU was 3 hours one way, which was definitely a lot of it. And that was a lot of time to use or resting or that kind of thing. But this award, I was able to move back to Toronto this year as I start my first year of my PhD. And so I'm really grateful for that because now I can not only really focus on my studies, but also enjoy my PhD as well. You know, be able to take the time for myself, spend time on campus with my cohort. And I think that that is going to also make my research even better as I've constructed relationships between Indigenous peoples and settlers in Canada. So again, thank you so much, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at my email. Thank you.
So let me. Just one more time.
Hello, everyone. Ani Bojo, as you know now, my name is Jessica. I'm half Anishinaabe and half Hungarian. And I just first and foremost wanted to express my most sincerest gratitude to receive and be recipient of the SAGE Award. I completed my Master's of Social Work just this year. Actually, just in July, I officially submitted my major research paper. And this award, Jackie was so kind to share with me. The purpose of the SAGE Award is to encourage Indigenous graduates and help support them along their way. And this award, in fact, did exactly just that. My program is 1 year full time, and I also had a field placement practicum to do in my studies. And as you know, that is employment, essentially employment without pay. So this award allowed me to be a mom, and those aren't, it's not when you're working full time with no pay. So thank you so much, Chimigwech. I'm here to share with you my research during my master's program, which I'm very fortunate to be able to do. My research is titled Ijishmo as Anishinaabe-centered social work practice, and I'll get into more about what this title means and what my MRP is. So I did kind of give a brief intro on Anishinaabe. I'm from Chippewas of Nawash First Nation. There are many ways you can refer to my community, Cape Croker being the English name. It's up near Wyerton and Lions Head off the coast of Georgian Bay. The Anishinaabe-Moan translation of my community is Neashingaming, which means point of land surrounded by all three sides of water. And if you look at it on a map, it is surrounded on all three sides of the Georgian Bay. And these are some photos of my community. So my research, tradition and the construction of a jingle dress in relation to Anishinaabe-centered social work practice. There's a lot of many moving parts to my research, but I essentially am championing the idea that social work practice, when we are Indigenous and we are working with Indigenous communities, is so much more than just treating symptoms or issues that Indigenous people commonly face, like homelessness or substance use issues, to support them in that. It's actually using Anishinaabe intelligence, knowledges, modalities, and traditional teachings, and using those teachings to create a whole paradigm of social helping. And that is how we continue to work with community, and that is how we work with community in that context. We're not always just using Western and working with Indigenous folks. We're creating our whole entire paradigm of social helping. So that's kind of what an MRP is. I engage with this research process. How many of you, by a show of hands, are familiar with what a jingle dress may be? Okay, so I'm here to tell you. So if you've ever seen a powwow or traditional Indigenous dancing celebrations, you may see regalia, which is our traditional clothing. A jingle dress is one of those formerly worn by women, adorned in hundreds of jingles. Some represent is known to be a source of healing. Origins of the jingle dress is that it originated around World War I, where this actually happened in multiple regions in Turtle Island, where someone has had a dream about the dress, making the dress, and then dancing in the dress to heal people going through, at the time there was a pandemic. So the story goes that there is a father who dreamt of this dress, created the dress for that it then to be used to heal his sick daughter. And it just happened in Turtle Island. So in America, and Canada, where this was happening, and then like executed in real life to promote healing. Then we found this dress and trickled into powwow culture, and the dance and the meaning of the dress has been incredibly significant to Indigenous communities. And the origins of the jingle dress is that it did happen, or it was created within the Anishinaabe Nation. So when I refer to my research, I refer to Anishinaabe-centered social work practice or and it's dependent on the context in which I'm using the term in. So when I'm referring to me doing my own social work practice, it's Anishinaabe because I'm Anishinaabe and I'm using my own, like the Anishinaabe teachings and traditional protocols when I'm referring to social work. But when I'm trying to be a little bit more traditional teachings, I refer to it as Indigenous-centered social work practice, just to give a little heads up there. This is a YouTube video of a jingle dress dancer, but technology is not in our favor today, so I'll skip it. But the inspiration for my thesis paper is the trend in academia where Indigenous scholars are using beadwork to inspire how they talk about research methodologies. So sinew, so that's like beeswax we cover in sinew, which is and she kind of relates that to her research ethos. And Tiffany Dion, she talks about beading as there are beads involved. There are actually European seed beads. Idea that we used European seed beads in our artwork, and she was kind of like resistant because they were European. But she then, like after thinking, was like, you know what? It never changed the relationship that Indigenous people had based for research. We can use both in Western forms, modalities of research together, and it'd be a really beautiful thing, similar to our artwork. So as you can see, they're using, this is what beadwork is, by the way. So this is beadwork that I've done. I've made some fringe earrings, and then I also did kind of like a picturesque form of beadwork. But they're using this process of beadwork and relating it to a contemporary understanding. And like these scholars have related it to research. Harmony, you think about balance. When Indigenous people go about doing traditional forms of art, we good spirit, because usually we gift these traditional art forms to other people. So we believe when we're engaging in this art form, when we're actually constructing it and working on it, we have to have a good mind and a good gifting. We're putting that into the artwork and then we're gifting it later on. So that's something that we can also learn when we're engaging in research, right? Eventually we're putting this research out there, so we have to engage with it in a good way. So when I was inspired by these, here's another example to relate to social work. And like, how can we understand social work from a perspective while like using this artwork kind of as a vehicle to understand it? So I actually had the privilege of constructing my own jingle dress. And as I was constructing the dress, I was thinking about like, oh, there's so much there, because the dress is traditionally a social work practice, is of course healing, right? And how we do that can be a really healing thing. And then I took some materials that are traditionally used in jingle dress construction and thought about them like as metaphors, like metaphorically, and related them to the practice. So this is essentially what my thesis paper was on, was actually going through all of these components. And so I did it like, there's the construction of the dress, which is the physical materials and the process of constructing a jingle dress. But then I also looked at the jingle dress tradition itself. And when I use the term tradition, because there's so much involved in jingle dress tradition. There's the drawing, there's singing and dancing, and then there's also the responsibility of wearing the dress. So I'm kind of looping all of those things in and labeling it as the tradition. For my research, I also use the medicine wheel as a theoretical framework. So the medicine wheel, oh, my format's off a little bit there, but the medicine wheel is a traditional modality used for Indigenous pedagogies. It's a circle that is comprised of 4 quadrants. They also look very familiar to you. It could be used for directions, the 4 seasons, life stages, but it is commonly representative of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual quadrants. I use the medicine wheel because it allows me to involve like the emotional inspiration of whatever it is I'm trying to communicate, which we don't often in academic work or findings in this manner that is more reflective. So broke my thesis page construction as a method of healing, and then its corresponding relevance to Anishinaabe-centered social work practice. Within the physical, I used materials, as I mentioned, for making and literal, figurative, metaphorical principles observed during dressmaking, so like social work. And then in the emotional quadrant, I talked about reimagining social work practice using the teachings of the dress. And then I labeled that Ijishimo as Anishinaabe-centered social work practice, because Ijishimo is an Anishinaabe-Moan translation for dancing. And dancing a certain way. So we are kind of dancing a certain way with all of these teachings and practice. So when I broke these down, also the origins of the dress came at a time at World War I, as I mentioned, but it was also a time where Indigenous people weren't able to practice their spirituality or culture. They weren't allowed to wear regalia. So this has been seen as a form of resistance itself. So I talked about that in relation to social work. I can't identify and my scholars expressing Anishinaabe women's knowledges in their graduate research. As this question, I echoed a similar question back to myself. What knowledge can I offer to Toronto Metropolitan Faculty of Social Work? What piece of literature was within my undergraduate program? Much of the literature I read on Indigenous-centered social work practice has not been fully dedicated to be written in relation to artwork. When we pose these questions to ourselves and answer them, we are walking a separate path, one that asserts Indigenous discourse, methodologies, and ontologies at the forefront. The hardest part of this journey is seeing and believing in our inherent knowledge, then to communicate our own way. Western academia has for positioning the student or inferior, always referencing and dedicating to an author. My hopes for this MRP is that our Anishinaabe is that other initiatives and assert their presence within the academy. As I wrote this paper, I had many moments of insecurity and fear halting my writing process. When I confided in my feelings of a deep sense of fear to my partner, he said, "It's okay, be scared, and it's okay to be scared and write at the same time." And I hope other Indigenous knowledge keepers write scared too. And that's just, yeah. Thank you. One last thing, I've also linked my paper to Anthony. So if anyone is curious to read, you can have it there as well. Thank you.
Many thanks. The first thing is the Dr. McClure book. It's owns a copy in 2 volumes. I looked volume 1's with, and I really strong. It's part of a history of our club, and I strongly recommend you read it. I read about 80% of my books are biographies, and that's one of the best I've ever read. I had a hell of a time putting it down. So talk to Dr. Joe. It's really an amazing story. I is a long-time Rotary type of person who makes it, turns around and said, if I can make it, everybody else can. Why should I help? And the best type of person, true Rotarians, are people who make it in life and turn around and say, how can I help my people? And I appreciate what you're doing. But I go down the line, maybe your children or grandchildren, one step further. Not only do we need to help financially Indigenous people moving forward because we owe them, but more importantly, we've got so much to learn from them. So it'd be great, your First Nations, not just to have First Nations practices in sorry, Western practices to take on First Nations. Because to thank you, I think it's great to have speakers where our club can help, and I appreciate you coming. Thank you very much.
We're just winding up. Bill Martin wants a couple of minutes to talk about the upcoming golf tournament, and then Lionel will close our meeting with an abbreviated report.
Thanks, Ron. Is away. Everything's going well. We have 9 foursomes, 36. The clubs will have as many. So we should have a full field, about 140. We have some who have 7 or 8 of those, which is grand. What we're missing are some volunteers. We need a few to help us on that day. Trails may have 1 or 2. The other thing we need are prizes. Jackie's donated a prize. We need prizes for the 50-50 draw. For what's going to happen? They're going to happen during the event. They're not going to delay the event. So time-wise, it all should go smoothly after the golf. Are there any questions? So if you can volunteer, please let me know. Yes, Walter.
You expect golfers at this dinner?
Not they're volunteers. Okay, thank you.
Just very briefly, the Youth and Services Committee update for Wednesday, September 4th. The Youth Committee met a couple of weeks ago and discussed board sustainable programs with charities that we've established good relationships. That said, 2 new projects brought forward that, as well as the mental health field. One is the Homework Club, and the other is Diabetes Camp. These are two charities that we're currently assessing at this point. We also intend to revisit a charity that we supported for several years, but left off our list last year due to not being eligible for bingo funds, namely ACE. This is a charity that promotes the well-being of kids with facial needs through positive camping experiences and other social programs, thereby allowing them to integrate more easily into the school system and their vocation of choice later on. There may be an opportunity to support HIP, honoring Indigenous peoples at a local level, rather than their national conference each year, which is held in Mission, BC, and which we supported this year, and thereby making a chosen program eligible again for bingo funds. That is right, and we're directing our charities in that respect. A couple of charities, Real Start and Frontier College, which we looked at briefly last year, have been dropped. There appears to be little interest in our club's attempt to understand their programs and thereby offer potential funding and support. And lastly, the Jeopardy exchange programs, which was brought up a couple of weeks ago, is that since the TDSB charged this program, we'd want to investigate possibly other school boards to inquire on their costs regarding exchange students. Some things we've done in the past. There are current applications for the next month for board approval. And that's basically the update for today. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have anything very quickly for the good of Rotary?
Just quickly, is anyone from the environmental action group here today? I know Nan had to leave. Do you have anything you want to share about Sunday or no? So you guys are all good? So everyone knows we're tree planting on Sunday? Okay, so is Nan gonna send another email or confirmation or?
I'll check this.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's not about that.
Wait, okay, if those who are planting trees, I'll see you Sunday. Tom?
I just want to remind everybody that Vanstock, which is the big support for trails, is coming up, and I sent an email out there. All you have to do is make a donation, get a free ticket to Massey Hall. So I'll get that out this week.
Great. Super. I guess we'll see everyone on Zoom next week or planting trees Sunday morning. Have a good week. Yeah, my phone died. So
I know. I don't know why it didn't work.